Welcome to Put Up Your Spooks, the horror podcast where your ghost hosts, Jeff and Ryan, clash over the best of 80s and 90s television.
Joining us today, Ed Erlach and Drew Weary. Gentlemen, I demand you put up your spooks. This week's theme: acting! Brilliant! The episodes we will be discussing this evening are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun,
And Tales from the Crypt, top billing.
Well, I love The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun. It's not one of the best episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark, but it holds a special place in my heart because Irish mythology is my favorite mythology. The episode begins in a magical forest where a magical leprechaun is protecting a boy from a magical...
Too much magic.
Goblin. The boy says, help me, you gotta save me, this goblin's gonna get me. And then the leprechaun's like, cool man, take this oath.
The fairy ring, the dance and sing, the mortal bloom a dying thing. Now turn me into spirit bright, and leave behind the human light.
So he does, and it's all cool, and then they say, cut! It's all a play. Jake is the boy who desperately wants to be an actor. There's a huge running theme through both of these episodes, which is main characters who desperately want to be actors, and everyone around them telling them that they're awesome at acting, but in reality, they're really shitty at acting.
No one tells John Lovitz he's good at acting. Quite the opposite.
No, they do. His agent, everyone's like, yeah, you're a good actor, but you don't got the face.
Oh, that's fair.
So he goes backstage where the stage manager tells him, oh, you're doing a great job, Jakey, because he's real low on confidence. And it turns out that Aaron, the main character of the play, the leprechaun, has a special herbal tea that gives him his creativity. Creativity?
Yeah?
And Jake thinks, well, gee, maybe that can help me. So the stage manager gives him the list of ingredients and sends him off to the special herbal greenhouse, where he meets a delightful little fellow named Sean O'Shaney, who looks at his list of ingredients and says, what the fuck? You get out of my shop! I ought to murderize you. And so he chases Jake away, and they do another rehearsal, and Jake says, help, you gotta save me from the goblin. And he says, okay, do the oath and speak as I speak. And he drinks the special drink, but this time when he does it, his voice changes, gets real deep and weird and creepy. And he's like, no, I don't like this.
What's happening? Keep going on. Don't stop now. You're on to something.
No, stop it.
It's a little weird in retrospect when you're not a kid. So they stop again, and he realizes, hey, something's weird about this. I got to go talk to Sean again. So he goes back to the greenhouse and somehow convinces Sean O'Shaney that he's not the evil one responsible for actually gathering these herbs. So he goes, I'm going to go and check out this play because I got a bad feeling about this Aaron character you're talking about. He takes him back to the theater for the final dress rehearsal. They do the thing. The fairy ring does dance and sing, blah, blah, blah. His voice changes again. Sean O'Shaney knows what's going on, so he rigs some set piece to fall and almost kill everybody. When Jake goes backstage again, Sean grabs him and says, this is really not good. Things are not going well for you. And he's like, no, it's just a play or whatever.
Look at your ears,
and
lad.
He's like, and then Sean's like, oh, just a play, is it? Yeah, look at your ears. And Jake's got pointy ears, which I don't know how that transitions you into a frog, but we'll get to that. So then they hatch a plan. They go down to Aaron's dressing room. They pull the fire alarm so that he'll leave so they can check out his place. Aaron's got this creepy shrine to Jake with a photo and a piece of his clothing, and he's chanting and doing all this weird stuff. There's a little
it really
frog.
looks bad for Aaron.
It looks real bad for Aaron. There's a frog in a jar, which Jake thinks is his pet frog, but Sean explains is a changeling, which is what Jake is about to become. So they steal some herbs. Then Aaron comes back in the room, almost catches them. He takes off his fake ears and his shoes, and he's all fucked up and crazy. He's got big weird ears. He's got a super hairy back. He keeps chanting. They escape, and Sean tells him that is a banshee. I was a little disappointed because in my memory he was a fur derrig, and he sucks souls every 7 years, and that's what's happening to Jake. So they mix up some herbs that they're going to feed to Aaron. He makes Jake drink spiders, which is pretty gross.
Because rule number 1 is you must be fearless.
Rule number 1, you must be fearless. Maybe that's why he made him drink spiders. That's a good point, just to prove his fearlessness. I always just assumed they were some kind of magical property containing spiders. It's opening night. Everyone's loving it. The Act 1 intermission happens. He gets a little pep talk from Sean. Make him drink this tea. Hold his gaze.
Hold his gaze was rule number 3. What was rule number 2?
Rule number 1, be fearless. Rule number 2, give him a taste of his own medicine. Rule number 3, don't take your eyes off him. You must spellbind him. Lock your eyes with his and turn his own spell against him.
He gives him the 3 rules. Jake goes back out on stage, performs his task admirably. Aaron knows what's up because he drank the juice. And he says, "Who you been talking to, boy?" And then he throws the thing, which takes Jake's gaze away. And then when he looks back, Aaron's behind him, and he's a big crazy monster. And he turns Jake into a frog. And the stagehands are like, "We don't know what's going on, but just roll with it." The audience is eating it up every second, even though it makes no narrative sense. Then Sean O'Shaney shows up in full Leprechaun gear.
A character who, for the audience in the theater, has not appeared
never seen before, no. But it's a play about leprechauns, and he's clearly playing up the leprechaun-iness.
When you see a little person appear in a tree in full leprechaun
you just
regalia.
assume. Yeah. So he knows Aaron by his true name, Gort. They've had dealings in the past. Sean owns Gort's tail and has been keeping it all these years. And so he knows the rule that a demon of fairy cannot refuse a trade, and yours be mine and mine be yours is all it takes.
Yours be mine and mine be yours was all it took.
So he says those magic words, trades the tail back to Aaron, who is destroyed because he never got Jake's soul, and Jake is restored to boyhood, and the play closes to rave reviews. And that one, Pop Pop, was for you.
And Pop Pop was the kid in the play, right?
No.
That's how I took it, because it was the same hat.
It was the same hat.
Let's talk about the narrative device, the wraparound with the Midnight Society. It was very confusing because it starts with the main kid saying, "You all know we have a strange situation tonight. The kid that's supposed to be speaking tonight is not here, so we're going to turn it over to this other kid."
No, Frank was there, but because
of unusual circumstances, he has agreed.
The other kid's grandfather died.
He
jumped in.
Oh, I thought something had happened to Frank.
I didn't know
in a
the name of the
previous
different
episode.
characters. So,
but they didn't necessarily have to say all that stuff about Frank giving up the night. He could have just been like, "I'm telling the story tonight. My grandfather died." I don't really know why they bothered to do that.
Frank usually tells the story?
No, he was just slotted to tell the story on that particular night.
And so is there an actual order to
but
the
because
program? Of,
Eric... I don't know if
I mean,
you
do they
actually,
actually
if
move
you
from
actually
kid to
watch
kid?
the episodes in order, I don't think they would I don't think they would rotate because some of the actors only got a couple of stories.
Because I'm wondering, was there a kid who was like heavy into this show that was like, "Oh, I can't wait! It's Frank's turn to tell a story next week."
No,
and then we got this kid.
Never would have happened. Hey Ed, hey Drew, what did you guys think of the tale of Jake and the Leprechaun?
I too like Irish, whatchamacallit, mythology and folklore and stuff. It bothered me that he was a banshee, though, because a banshee is a woman.
Shouldn't
none
have
of
been
it.
a banshee. You sexist.
A banshee is a spirit that wails to
It's a
to
wailing
pretend
female
a
spirit.
death. It's not an ogre with a tail, and the tail gets severed, and it has to get its tail back. A changeling is not a person that changes.
Right, it's
Correct,
a fairy
also
that
correct.
is...
Changeling is a
However,
fairy baby.
if you are a 9-year-old kid watching this on a Saturday night, you're like, oh, I guess he's turning into a changeling. I don't know. It's actually a really good entry into Irish myth if you're just a little kid. And if you're excited about it, as I was, then you can poke further and learn the truisms.
That it was all wrong.
Yeah.
That's not how glamours work. I don't know, dude. It was pretty insulting to the Irish mythology. Hold on. I think Sean O'Shaney, I think he's supposed to be Irish.
He is supposed to be Irish. Of course he's supposed to be Irish.
Wait,
Yes,
Sean
the name
O'Shaney was...
Sean O'Shaney.
Sean O'Shaney was Migosh.
Ha,
Yeah.
ha,
Okay.
ha, ha. Rule
It was
number 1.
It was Migosh from Willow, the little guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know Willow well enough, even though I own
Willow's best friend, Migosh.
it. That's cool. I gotta watch Willow again.
Speaking of Sean O'Shaney, a.k.a. Migosh, I was a little worried when they brought the little person on to fill the leprechaun role.
The magic fairy character.
But I thought it was not exploitative.
No, he was
exploitative.
good.
He was a heroic character with agency.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He was very
He's my
animate
favorite part
too.
of the
Like he was
episode.
very like all over the place.
He was
very animated.
kind of swashbuckling.
Yeah, he did a good job. He was cool.
Pretty awesome.
He was a little hot with the hair.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought.
he had
'cause
the
I'm used to-
Fabio hair.
luxurious.
I'm used to curly-haired Migosh, but this was like romance novel Migosh or something. Why did he live in a shack in a greenhouse, though?
I think that was just
He was
his
a
little
leprechaun.
He was his little herb shed. It was where he did his mixing.
He was a leprechaun when the need arose.
Yeah. It was never established that was his full-time house. There was
But
no
he had-
bed in there.
There was all kinds of living material in there. There was a
I never
chair
saw
and-
no bed.
Yeah, there was. He had kept a pipe in
Maybe
there.
he sleeps in a... Of course he keeps his pipe in his herb shed. Duh.
It was all right. It was charming.
Yeah.
Let's talk Tales from the Crypt top billing.
Let's do.
Top billing.
This episode was suggested by our very own Ed Erdelac.
This one I always remembered mainly from the promo as a kid because in the promo they always showed him standing behind the coat rack, Lovitz, and he's staring, and he's sliding that like rope off the hanger, and he's like, "From this day forth, my thoughts be bloody," and I don't know.
Nothing worth. That was a pretty dope shot.
Yeah, it's a cool shot, and I love the look in his eyes. Like, Lovitz isn't really thought of as a. I like when they cast people against type, especially like comedians and stuff. And to make John Lovitz like kind of menacing in that shot was like, man, I want to watch that. That looks cool. And I was way into Hamlet at the time because I watched that Franco Zeffirelli Mel Gibson one, which they had a shout out to in the episode. Mel can play Hamlet because he's got the look. So I was it was up my alley at the time and everything. So John Lovitz plays Barry, and he's this struggling actor, and he opens up, he goes into Sarah Bernhardt's office, coming towards her with a rope to strangle her, and she calls him Paul or something, and she's like, "What are you doing here, Paul?" or something, and he's like, "I've come to kill you, you bitch."
Yeah,
And
and,
he,
she goes, "That's real good.
Yeah.
You did a real good job."
And he's like gently throttling her neck, and he's not very good. He's kind of going, yeah. Very funny looking.
In true Lovitz style.
And so it turns out it's the middle of an audition, and she tells him, you're very good. You're just not right for the part. You don't have the look. I need somebody tall and tan. First she says, I need somebody larger, and he's like, well, I could wear padding. And she's like, no, I need somebody taller, larger, and tan. And so he kind of stalks out into the hallway, and there's a whole line of like twerps
Nerds.
outside with their ropes going over the line. I've come to kill you, bitch, and all this. And he goes home to his.
Well, before he makes it to the elevator, who should he see but his old
Tron.
roommate and rival?
That's Tron?
That's Tron. That's Bruce Boxleitner. Yeah.
Bruce
That-
Boxleitner.
Oh yeah.
Whoa, he looks way different in Tron Legacy.
Also, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, I think he was in.
He was in everything, and damn good-looking man. He was
Yeah,
in Babylon
strapping
5.
guy,
He was the
strapping
captain on Babylon 5.
Go ahead.
So Barry stalks out of the failed audition and sees a scrawled ad for Actors Wanted Hamlet. So he tears one off, and he runs
$250 a week.
and he runs into Bruce Boxleitner, who is his old roommate and acting colleague. And clearly, this guy is like rocking a sweet leather jacket. He's tall, tan, capped teeth, frosted hair. Looks like $1 million.
I love the line where he asks him, "Hey, remember that rat hole we used to live in?" He's like, "Yes, I still live there."
And so Barry's all bummed out because he still lives in the rat hole with his loving girlfriend, and
Victoria Jackson.
He has stuck to the artiste life of acting, and he's essentially unemployed. Whereas Barry, who has the look, he's got the face. He has gone on to do commercials and other lucrative things, and they kind of spar with Barry really just kind of being ruthless, and Bruce Boxleitner kind of being pretty jovial, and was like, you can't still be mad at me. Come on, we're here to work. We're here to sell tickets. We're not here to be suffering artists. So they go their separate ways. He goes to his agent's office and demands that she get him the part in
Louise
Hamlet.
Fletcher, Nurse Ratched from
Nurse Ratched. And predictably, she dumps him as a client. And
tells him to get. I told you to get plastic surgery or something.
Yeah, she wanted him to get the look.
The look.
She's like, you don't have the face, you don't have the look.
And Tron told him to get blue contacts or something too. I remember.
Yeah, and so every time he's getting rejected, this kind of seething rage is building. Even though he's sort of a milquetoast, nebbishy guy.
Lovitz rage.
Yeah, the Lovitz rage is kind of boiling over. So he swears he's going to get this job as Hamlet and shove his reviews at $250 a week down her throat.
Right.
So he goes home to his apartment, and he has to go up the stairs because someone's loading all this furniture, and they're moving and using the elevator. And it turns out it's his furniture. He's being evicted, and his girlfriend is dumping him for Bruno from acting class. They're taking all their things. She left him chicken in the oven, but all the guys moving out
have a chicken leg.
Are taking chicken legs.
They're eating the chicken.
And then he gets locked out of his place.
Yeah, can't even get in there.
And he gets called a loser.
Twice.
So the next thing we see is he's wandering down this long, trash-choked alley in the middle of nowhere trying to find this theater. And when he gets there, there's a guy banging on the door to no response, and it's his old acting rival, Bruce Boxleitner. Yeah. And he's like, what are you doing here for Hamlet? He said, well, I was going to come down here and audition and show you that it's about how you look. It's not about talent. Uh-huh. And, I think it was kind of tough love. Like, he wanted to say...
Maybe at first.
I don't know.
Like, if I am able to take the role of Hamlet from you, will you finally get off unemployment, change your look, and commit to, the commercial side of the business? Because I want you to, grow up and be a working actor. Finally, the door opens, and this very strange, porny, pervy character
Mr. Bentley
leans out.
From the Jeffersons.
Mr. Bentley from the Jeffersons. And,
oh, weird. That actor played the judge in the Addams Family movie?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he did.
And Mr. Gomez.
And then a couple, and another scene later, John Astin, the original Mr.
So they're led into this theater where there's rehearsals for Hamlet, and there's a very poor Hamlet type who looks like the guy from Tears for Fears. And he's reciting the classic Alas, Poor Yorick scene with a plastic skull. And he's just not into it. He doesn't like the plastic skull. And the director is just freaking the fuck out on him about acting and not being able to commit to the plastic skull. And the actor is none other than Gomez Addams.
Yeah.
And he has like a drawn-on mustache and like a
bad wig,
a genie hat, and just bad wigs and bad mustaches and bad scarves and clothing for days. Lovitz and Boxleitner are kind of there jockeying for the role of Hamlet, and he makes a snap decision, and he decides to cast Bruce Boxleitner because he has the look.
High cheekbones.
He has the high cheekbones. He might be Danish.
So he does mention his frosted tips, though.
Yeah, his frosted hair. Bruce Boxleitner is delighted and is kind of like, in your face, John Lovitz. I told you, it's all about having the look. John Lovitz is really boiling over with rage at this point. So he sneaks into Bruce Boxleitner's dressing room, and Bruce Boxleitner is changing into his outfit, and he reaches back and he pulls out a tag, and he's like, what the hell? And about that time, John Lovitz, kind of recreating Hamlet's indecisive murderer, kind of busts out, and they have an argument that ends in him strangling his rival, Bruce Boxleitner, like he couldn't strangle the casting agent in the first scene.
Dead for a ducat, it's from Hamlet, you idiot!
So he kills Bruce Boxleitner, and he hides his body in this sort of storage closet. And there's like a locked door, and there's a phone ringing off the hook in the other room.
They go through the keyhole, and there's a guy kind of like sitting over a desk, but he shows no reaction to the phone and everything.
Right.
And there's blood smudged on the doorknob.
Right. So they go back to the theater production, and John Lovitz comes out and says, the other guy left. It was the worst case of stage fright I'd ever seen. He was blue.
He's gone all blue.
So he's hamming it up, and eventually Gomez Adams decides that he'll be okay for the part. They just got to change their vision a little bit. So John Lovitz is all happy. He goes to his dressing room, and he's changing.
And he's going over the lines, and he for a minute he busts into the accent that he does on SNL when he's playing the actor. He's picking the tights out of his butt, and he's awful. It's just funny. But so then they come in,
the director, the stage manager,
and the kid that was playing the awful Hamlet.
Kid from Tears for Fears comes in, and they're like, "Yeah, we're ready to go." He's like, "I haven't even rehearsed yet," and they're like, "Oh, you don't need to rehearse." And he's like, "But I'm Hamlet." They're like, "Who told you were Hamlet?"
Yeah, the kid is like, "Don't you really remember? I'm Hamlet."
He's like, "I'm Hamlet," and he's like, "Well, what role am I playing?" And he's like, "Didn't you label the costume?" He's like, "Aha!" Creepy guy picks up the label, and it says Yorick. So he's been cast as the skull. And so John Lovitz goes, "You're all mad."
And
Gomez goes, "Mad?"
And the one guy holds up he's like, "Just put this on," and it's a sack, and the bottom half of the sack is just like
severed and bloody.
Yeah, like soaked in old blood and everything. Because he's like, we keep having trouble casting York because people keep stealing the skull or something. So Lovitz runs, and he locks them into one room, and he goes back to the room with the bloody with the keyhole that we saw through before, and he fumbles with the keys and he gets it open. And he busts in, and there's the guy slumped over the table, and he turns him around in his swivel chair, and the guy's throat has been cut, and he's been dead for a while, like he's gray, you know. And then, so it turns out that he's in this like a ward for the criminally insane.
Yeah,
a home for the criminally insane, and
an
all
institute for the criminally insane.
All the orderlies and the security guards are lying out in the hallways, just all with their throats slashed and everything.
Every window splashed with blood.
Yeah.
By then, the director and crew bust in with an axe, and they hack off his head. And in short order, we see Hamlet performing his scene with a fleshy, bloody skull.
With one eyeball in it.
With one eyeball in it. And then you think that's going to be the end, and then they move out into the alleyway where
the cops are pulling up.
Police are stacking up, pulling out their machine guns, getting ready to storm the Institute for the Criminally Insane. And then we move past that into the garbage, where we see a hollowed-out face of John Lovitz, and then a dog comes up and just
makes
off
with
his face. The end.
So great.
So, Ryan, what did you think of Tales from the Crypt top billing?
I have many issues with this episode of Tales from the Crypt top billing, starring John Lovitz. My aforementioned poor acting.
Wait, of Lovitz?
Of Lovitz.
Well, but he's supposed to be kind of bad, I think.
No, as I've explained, he's supposed to be good.
Okay.
Because he's the one who takes it seriously. I don't know why having frosted hair would make your skull good for the part of Yorick. I don't know how a bunch of criminally insane people wandered around town putting up flyers to cast Hamlet.
I did think about that when I was watching it.
As did I. I made a note about that. That's possibly the one plot hole.
The only.
Yeah.
We don't know how long the inmates had taken over the
enough
asylum.
for the blood to congeal on all those bodies.
A week or so, at least. Maybe 2 weeks.
And when the phone...
Enough to make
Lovitz
props
picks up
and
the
costumes.
Lovitz picks up the phone when it's ringing the second time when they're about to get him, and somebody's calling for, like, I've been calling for hours for the doctor or something.
So,
And I don't know why you'd need to make a full costume if you're just going to chop off York's head.
well, those are crazy people.
No, they're just
That's
nuts.
true. They
Yeah.
are crazy.
I feel like you're nitpicking.
They are crazy
This
people.
episode was amazing.
I like how it goes. It looks like you know what's going to happen. It's going to be straight up. He's going to kill him. It's in the promo, you know. And then like it takes this weird ass turn.
It was such a good turn, and it was a tonal shift
Yeah.
because Gomez and the theater people are hamming it up so hard. I was like, am I watching Goosebumps or
Yeah.
Tales from the Crypt?
Yeah, it seems like a kid show for a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you have this twist at the very, very end that recontextualizes all the over-the-top like hijinks. Or like, oh no, these people are insane.
Yeah, they're not
And
just
they've
being
been-
actors.
They've been
They're-
hitting you over the
they're
head
just
with
theater
this
people.
the entire episode.
True.
Like when he pulls the hastily scrawled actor wanted for Hamlet thing, Bruce Boxleitner is like, what kind of theater would be in that part of town?
Yeah.
And then they goes down the creepy alleyway and he's banging on the door and it doesn't look like a theater. It takes forever.
They do have a stage, however.
They do have a stage, which is funny, but you know the phone kind of just ringing nonstop in the background is really unsettling. The music kind of throughout is reggae, which I thought was a really weird
Little
choice.
steel drums. Yeah.
Except it's all
Insane.
this like weird discordant throw you off your balance. Like this is all light and wacky.
Like, look at this poor schlub.
Yeah. Until you see, you know, all the orderlies lying slaughtered in heaps and the windows splashed with blood. That was really good.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
that's
that
like
one.
that vertiginous horror, like, oh,
Yeah.
shit. I thought Lovitz was going to cut off the other dude's face.
Oh,
like,
shit.
wear it.
And
Oh,
wear
and
I
put
it.
thought that
yeah.
was because they were like, you don't have the face, you don't have the face. But no, they zigged.
Yeah.
He ended up being
Even at the
head.
end, he does not have the face.
Yeah, they kind of.
And his face is for the dogs.
Yeah, I liked that both the actors in it, Barry Bly and Bruce Boxleitner, were terrible people in their own way, but the protagonist was actually worse because he was a murderer,
Yep.
and they both got punished in their vainglorious competition.
And Bruce Boxleitner maybe walked away. He didn't strangle him for that long. He could have just passed out. I didn't hear a
Yeah.
snap.
He strangled him and then stripped him and threw him in a laundry basket, and I think he was dead.
Oh,
Yeah.
stripping adds extra kill.
Well, I think if he was trying to kill him and he had the time to strip him and he didn't wake up then...
Perhaps. Maybe he was just playing so that he could escape.
Yeah,
Come on, Tron. You gotta get out of there.
No.
man, you're
He got
you're
derailed.
No,
nitpicking
I
all
also-
over this episode. Of Tales
I
from
agree
the
that
Crypt,
this is a
but,
very good
woo,
episode.
That Leprechaun shit, you just
I
you have
agree
a free
that
pass to
I
every
agree that
part
this
of
is
it.
a very good episode, but my one pet peeve for all of these scary tales is that it all takes place in broad daylight. I hate that. It's,
I always
hard,
found
it's
that-
real hard to give spooky atmosphere in broad daylight.
I always found that more unsettling, personally. Like, the first thing that ever really scared me was The Exorcist. When I walked in on it, and it was that scene where her head turns around, and that scene is happening in broad daylight. And the furniture's flying around and all this, and that freaked the fuck out of me when I was a kid. Because
Yeah.
I'm used to...
Yeah, I suppose.
I was used to horror being in the dark, you know?
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't
Doesn't
know
do
that
it
this
for
was
me.
horrible. Like, I don't know that Tales from the Crypt scares me, but I don't have a problem with it being in the daylight.
We've talked about this so far on the podcast, which is Tales from the Crypt starts with the Crypt Keeper who's making jokes and wry little asides and puns. So,
late for my beating. Yeah.
so it tells you it's not trying to be scary. It's all kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's really about tits, and it's about, like,
John Lovitz's tits.
ironic
Yeah, not a single
morality
tit.
plays. It's very rarely about monsters and demons or ghosts. It's almost always about greedy humans or lustful humans
Getting their comeuppance.
and getting their comeuppance.
Fine. Could still take place at night.
All right, let's get into our ratings. So, for The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun, scare factor.
When you're a kid and he turns into a devil goblin, it's kind of scary. And when they're trapped under his bed,
Yeah, that's
his
a good
weird,
scene.
creepy
I was
feet.
going to say, when he takes the shirt off and he has that huge patch of awful hair on his back, That's pretty creepy.
For sure, that was the most disturbing
Also,
scene. Yeah.
Also gross factor.
So
they were one fart away from that being just a classic.
So a little bit scary, a little bit gross. Okay,
Yeah.
what the factor?
Only mostly a little bit.
I feel like they were all over the shop with that Irish mythology.
Well, certainly, but it wasn't. It was fairly straightforward. Where some of the episodes have been really impossible to predict.
Didn't have any of those wild right turns
No,
that
no.
other episodes have had. So
No,
pretty
pretty
low.
straightforward.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay, the theme of acting.
Vink factor at least 50% though. Aaron was like 50% Vink.
No, he was gross. He wasn't a ghost or a scientist. Big factor 0.
Theme, I would say 100 points.
100 points,
A
really.
little light on the theme,
was-
I think.
So
It was
light
all
on the
about
theme.
acting and
It was
theater.
not all about acting. It
No.
was set in the theater. It was all about a
Whimsy or
banshee that
something.
wants to turn a kid into a
Yeah, but
frog so he can have his soul.
It was a play within a. It was about the theater. I mean, you can't get much more. Okay, 95%.
It took place in a
Wrong.
theater.
just because you
but
didn't talk about acting
It
12,000
was the
times.
power struggle between a leprechaun and a banshee.
Yeah, which took place in the theater
A
in the
male
subtext of a
banshee.
play.
I feel like acting had little to nothing to do with it.
You can't. You guys.
Yeah,
You
a
always
little
get down
light.
to my themes.
There was one line where he said, "Do you think I could be any good?" or something like that, and
And that's about
It was
where it
abandoned
stopped
right
being about
It was-
acting.
it was
at all.
abandoned
He was
right
turning
after
into a, and rightfully so. Once you start turning into a changeling, you don't think about your acting anymore.
Well,
And Aaron talked to him constantly about you've got to let go, and the theater is 100 years old as I am, and when you feel the glamour, you just got to roll with it. That's acting.
They dumped all of that in the first 2 minutes.
Untrue. No. Every single dress rehearsal, Aaron's telling him about the craft of acting and letting go
They spent
and
more
feeling
time
it.
naming herbs than they did talking about acting.
Disagree.
Jake Joyce wanted to be an actor more than anything else. What's that stuff Aaron's always drinking?
Herbal tea. He says it helps him be creative.
You think that stuff would help me? I'm not doing so hard.
You've got to let yourself go. What's happening to you now is the stuff of genius. Trust me. You have the gift, boy. Use it.
Maybe I'm just nervous about the play. But it's a play. It's not real.
That's the oath you've been taking during the play.
Sounds like a line from our play.
When did you say this play of yours is?
Look at this place. Over 100 years old. Shut your eyes. Feel the magic of the stage. The power of the theater. Let it transport you into another realm and make you into a magician.
How did they
Rewatch.
get to opening night too without ever completing that scene in their run-throughs?
Because it was all an elaborate ruse
We didn't see-
to
yeah, we
turn
didn't
a
see them
boy
finish
into
it.
a frog so he could get his soul. Because he's a banshee.
Yeah.
So, Tales from the Crypt. Normally, we've adopted shock factor instead of scare factor. But I think there was some scare factor in that episode.
That last twist at the end, where everybody's a psycho and everybody sane is dead, and he's there by himself.
He's trapped inside,
Yeah, it's
and you
pretty
realize that they've been broadcasting it the whole time.
Yeah, and then they one-up it with the face at the end, kind of getting dragged off by the dog, which I guess is more humorous.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
I would say scare factor high, gross factor pretty high.
Yeah.
You had the
Yeah, John
fleshless
Lovitz is pretty
skull,
gross.
John Lovitz's hollowed out face.
Yeah, with
No, I just mean in
one
general.
eye still in it, and the skull had one eye, and then when they cut to his face, it's there's one eye still
That was so
like
you
hanging in
knew.
the face.
I would say gross factor high. What the factor, that twist was very, very shocking. I did not see that coming.
Interesting
I'm
story.
glad you like that one. I like that one.
I once performed in a play where a man went to visit an insane asylum, and he was touring around, and the workers were telling him about the patients and the history of the place and blah blah blah. And then at the end, it turned out that they were all insane inmates, and we all murdered him at the end.
Sort of like
Same
that
thing.
Star Trek episode.
Sort
or
of like Shutter Island?
this.
Here's
thing.
an interesting story. Oh, go ahead. Finish the rating. Yeah.
Theme.
Theme of acting. Pretty high, dude.
So high.
Sure, yeah, that's all Lovitz talked
So
about.
much higher.
Was acting.
Than
acting.
So, Ryan.
Well, they certainly talked about acting more, but
Yeah.
I still think you're giving short shrift to the craft that was discussed in The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun.
Scare factor, Tales from the Crypt takes it. Gross factor, Tales from the Crypt takes it. What the factor, Tales from the Crypt takes it. Theme, acting, Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm just sitting here to
That is
recommend something that blows
4
away
for
Ryan's
4. Tales from the Crypt crushes.
Sure, fine.
Are you afraid of the dark? This week? Put up your spooks.
No, I'll never admit this defeat. Never! Never!
Here's
Yours be mine and mine be yours.
an interesting side story about Yorick, the Skull. There was a famous improv group in Chicago called Second City, and one of the main teachers of that was a guy named Del Close. And my buddy used to act at Second City and knew Del Close and everything, and he was there the year he died. And he supposedly donated his skull to play Yorick at the theater in Chicago, like from then on or something.
Gross.
Yeah, interesting.
We're like Del Gross.
Yeah. Famous guy, though. Taught Dan Aykroyd and, like, everybody you could think of that came from Chicago was an improv guy.
Special thanks to Johnathan Olson for composing our theme music. You can email him at stepwisestudios to get your own electronic and synth pop songs. Do you have any post-episode goofs?
Recite from memory Hamlet's soliloquy.
Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest and most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. Now, how abhorred in my imagination it is. Here hung those lips I kissed, I know not how often. Where be your jibes now, your ambles, your songs, your fits of merriment that were wont to set the table on a raw?
Not one now to mock your own grinning. Hey, my voice is changing. What's happening, guys? I don't like it. Rerun for your life!
Gotta eat that mic, bro.
Tell it to yourself.